You're listening to East of the Rockies, the Michigan Student Softball Podcast on WCBN Sports.
Well, Mr. Burns had done it. The power plant had won it, with Roger Clemens clucking all the while. Mike Scioscia's tragic illness made us smile, while Wade Boggs lay unconscious on the barroom tile. We're talking softball, from Maine to San Diego, talking softball. Mattingly and Canseco, Ken Griffey's grotesquely swollen jaw, Steve Sachs and his running with the law. We're talking Homer, Ozzie and the Straw.
Episode 11 of East of the Rockies. Here we go. WCBN Sports' Michigan Softball Podcast. And finally, it seems like it's been forever, but the gang is back together. Morris Fabry and Jeremy Parks on the other side of the glass. I am Kevin Klein, and let's get right into it. Michigan with a mid-week win against Michigan State 3-1, and they also took 2 out of 3 against Maryland, in which
Barely.
Somehow Maryland, they have 9 wins on the year now, and 1/3 of them is against top 25 opponents. You think of Florida, Mizzou, and Michigan. JP, I know you're chomping at the bit, so fire away. Let's get going.
You know what, Kev? People are expecting JP to come into the podcast and be all angry about a close series against Maryland and a close game against Michigan State and some midweek Big Ten action. And you know what? Today I'm a little more reserved. You know why? I think Maryland is a weird exception to a rule. They're like the mid-2000 Detroit Lions. For some reason, they beat all the teams that they're not supposed to beat, and they lose to the teams that they're supposed to beat handily. So why is this a Maryland team that can beat the number 1 team in the country in Florida early on in the season, and then go on and, lose to the likes of UT Martin by scores of 8-2 and losing to Binghamton 9-7.
Hey, tough softball competition.
Binghamton is just a softball hotspot.
Now, I have a question for you, JP. Now, do those two teams, do they have pitchers with ERAs that start with 1? Because I know, like Rachel Knapp of Central Michigan, you don't think is a competent pitcher.
And you know what? I don't think that's the whole thing either. I give credit to Maryland for the pitching was not incredible. I'll give them this much in the that middle game that they took 2-1. It was a really good performance from Hannah Dewey. She only gave up 4 hits the whole game. But then that other close game to close out the series that Michigan wins 4-3. You look at a combined effort between Dewey and Madison Martin, who started the game. They gave up 9 hits, but they did a decent enough job of keeping Michigan to, again, a lack of clutch hitting, which is just the ghost that haunts this team all season long. For some reason, it seems like in every big game, Maryland just comes out to play maybe more so than they do against the likes of UT Martin when they forget to get out of bed.
Get
I don't
out
know.
of here, JP. They got swept by Ohio State. They lost to Oregon by 14. They got swept by Michigan State. They lost 2 out of 3 to Northwestern. These are teams that Maryland was also supposed to beat, and they didn't conjure up some sort of magic to rise to the occasion. Maryland is a bad softball team. A broke clock is right twice a day. Every now and then a blind dog finds a bone.
Nice putting that one in there.
But Michigan is not a team that against whom that should happen.
I don't know.
It's not the Michigan that we're used to.
There's a few games on this schedule, and I said it last week before going into this Maryland series. Maybe it was I wasn't on last week. 2 weeks ago. I was absent last week. 2 weeks ago, we looked forward maybe just for a split second at this Maryland series, and I said that's a series where they drop one more game. We were talking about potential Big Ten ugly losses before the end of the season, and for some reason, looking at some of these games that Maryland played close or won against good teams, I thought that's got to be the series that they lose the bad game. And,
it was bad.
And they almost lost 2 bad games.
They should have lost 2 games.
Yes, that's true. Morris, as you said, I think the funniest line on this Maryland schedule is losing 22-0 to Ohio State at home just a few weeks ago. But they are a bad softball team. But for some reason, I'll still consider them an exception to the rule for the fact that they seem to play okay to well sometimes against really good teams. And that's okay. I think Michigan coming out with 2 wins is what I anticipated going in. Was it pretty? No. But then you come back again yesterday against Michigan State. Again, not a super pretty game, not a terrible Michigan State softball team, but Megan Betza goes the distance, does well, gets Michigan a midweek win. I think, again, it's not great. I'm coming to terms with the fact that this is the way that this is going to be. We talked about sample sizes early on. We have well gotten beyond that. And this is the reality for this team, is that Michigan will not host a super regional. And at this point, unless, in my opinion, they go on to win the Big Ten tournament, they won't host a regional either. And you just have to work off those expectations, work towards the postseason where anything can happen.
I think what it comes down to, losses to teams like Maryland, is that ultimately sports, like so much else in life, a lot of it comes down to random chance, where a bat strikes a ball a fraction of an inch one way
that
or
is
another.
terrible, Mo,
in one
and
way
it.
Where you can swing these chances in your advantage, take a little bit of the randomness out of things is by being especially skilled.
Charles Barkley is in a corner saying that Mo's talk here is terrible.
Hey, in the past, Michigan has had enough talent, enough dynamite pitchers on the team where, they can, where less of the game is put up to chance. But when, the lineup doesn't hit like it has in the past, when you don't have a Sierra Lawrence, a Sierra Romero who give you the kind of certainty, the rock solid presences in the lineup, when you don't have lights out pitching that's going to go no hit every team, that's worth being no hit, as you predicted that Sunday Betza would throw one.
You know what?
Mo,
eventually some bounces are going to go against you.
I got a question for you. You're telling me that against a team like Maryland, who has 9 wins, that Michigan's talent does not outweigh the random chance of maybe a ball bouncing the wrong way once or twice?
Oh, it doesn't have to be once or twice. The chances add up.
So
there
telling
could
me
be a
there's
game
like
where you have 8 or 9 things go against you, and there are games where, Maryland just wakes up and they're the better softball team. Is that because they're, inherently better softball players, that they're more talented? Not necessarily, but that day, Michigan gets outplayed because, kind of their base level of talent is not resting so high that they can, take games off against crappy teams like Maryland.
I'm
not trying to excuse it. It sucks. It sucks that Michigan is susceptible to losses against a team like Maryland now, where they haven't been in the past. But, in the end, that's how sports work for the most part.
But why can this lineup, and I ask myself this every game, because there are no more easy run rule games. Why can this lineup just not put it completely together for one game?
I think
I think there's one game that Penn State 17-0 game.
If you go back again, and this is, I think, pretty blatantly obvious, but losing the linchpin in Romero has altered the offensive production of the team top to bottom. You look at not just the numbers that Sierra Romero puts up, but the position that she took up within the lineup and where people are being asked to hit in that lineup now. Something that we saw early on this season. It's starting to come back maybe to a bit of an average here with Tara Blanco, who I think a lot of people thought would have to take on the big bat role in this offense. And it's just a struggle because, Blanco was a good hitter hitting behind Romero, and now you lose the fact that a lot of the time Romero's getting walked, a lot of the time she's seeing junk pitches, and that always left Blanco in a much better position to hit. And now when your power hitter is getting a lack of production because pitchers aren't afraid to attack her at all anymore, it just throws the entire lineup off. And I think a lot of positions top to bottom, there have been tweaks all season long, but nothing has worked to the point where it's stuck.
Yeah, it's impossible to overstate Sierra Romero's impact and Sierra Lawrence's impact on the team.
And we haven't talked about it for a while.
Yeah.
And you just brought up Sierra Lawrence too. Another big
It's a fair point at this point of the season. It's a fair point to bring up.
But without getting into the whole butterfly effect sort of thing on how these kinds of presences affect other players' performances, some numbers stand out. So at the beginning of the season, a long time ago, our first podcast, we were making predictions for what number of home runs would lead the team, and our predictions centered around the number 15. Some of us predicted only one, maybe Tara Blanco would get there and would surpass it. Others of us predicted that more than one player would get to that 15 home run mark.
All right, that's fine, Mo. Just call me out, dude.
Hey,
call me
out. I was bullish as well.
At me.
I was bullish as well. And that is a standard that maybe we could be accustomed to as Michigan fans in the past. But, looking at the team right now, you have Christner and Canfield leading the team with 5 home runs apiece, and nobody else is really pushing them hard for that home run crowd. The power is not there. And, the positions at which you might expect some power, the corner outfield spot, left field, you're not getting much there. Behind the plate, not really getting much there. And, even the players who were supposed to step up, who we expected to, hit a few more dingers, they've still produced, but the power has not come.
That's the biggest point. In a small ballpark, the thing that made Michigan so effective was the fact that they could put the ball over the fence. Once you start keeping that ball inside the park more often, that limits the ability on the base paths to do that much. So we see Michigan get into situations where they'll put a runner on second, put a runner on third, but I think those situations in the past would be a ball over the fence. I don't think it was always a big hit to the gaps kind of thing. The home run power was always there for Michigan last year. And when you take that away, those situations in which we are now defining a lack of clutch hitting, it didn't used to be a problem because the ball was going over the fence as opposed to a ball that's kept in play. So the expectation is completely different.
Yeah, even Kelly Christner, phenomenal sophomore season, and she's had a phenomenal season this year as well, still hitting well over 400 despite a bit of a step back, only hitting 370 in conference play. But, she's dropped from 23 home runs her sophomore year to 5 this year. And, she's been the most innocent of offenders because she's getting so much production elsewhere on the diamond, but it adds up.
Well, right, there's nobody there that can back her up with a more powerful bat. That's the main point.
Well, and here's the stat that sticks out. I mean, in 14 conference games, Michigan's getting out-home runned. Or out-homered. What would be the verb?
Out-homered is probably the correct conjugation.
We are the ultimate homers for what it's worth. I love being a homer.
That's going to fall.
Michigan has hit 6 home runs in 14 conference games, and 2 of them have been Richardson. The others coming from Christner, Blanco, Falk, and Vargas, and 1 each. There is no power. It's tough to win games when you don't have a threat of being able to clear the bases with one swing or being able to drive in multiple with one swing.
Here is the big picture, the downside here of losing a game to Maryland. No matter whether I expected it, whether anybody expected it or didn't, the fact is now that Michigan in Big Ten conference play is 1 game behind Minnesota. Had they swept the series against Maryland, they would both be 13-1. Coming down the stretch, there's not a ton of tough competition. Minnesota still only plays Iowa, Purdue, who's a bottom feeder Big Ten team, and Penn State, who Michigan destroyed. So there's not a lot there for the Golden Gophers. Wisconsin was ranked at one point, has definitely fallen. We'll talk a little bit about them later. Indiana, not a great softball team. Rutgers, awful softball team, #Fence the Garden, and that's it. So I think this could have been a tie for the Big Ten regular season championship had Michigan not lost that game to Maryland. And now it's Minnesota's regular season to lose, but the one that really matters is that Big Ten tournament in Ann Arbor.
See, the thing for me, though, is, there's 10 games left in the regular season, and you just outlined what they were, except for the non-conference game against the Western Michigan Broncos. Do you see that? It has to be 10-0, but is it going to be 10-0? I highly doubt. I could see 9-1. I could see 8-2.
Yeah, it has to be 10-0 in order for them to have a chance to win the regular season Big Ten title.
I'm just saying, just keep the possibility open for hosting a regional.
Yeah,
it has to be 10-0.
At this point, I've kind of thrown that out of consideration, just because I think I have a pretty good idea of what this team is. And to be fair, in light of their offensive struggles, quote unquote, as much as you can have struggles,
it's still a good softball
on a team that's
overall.
32-9.
Yes.
Now they're winning 80% of their games instead of 85% or whatever. And a reason that they've been able to sustain that despite an offensive drop-off, this pitching rotation is better than any of us could have expected. And I think it's important not to lose sight of that. Megan Betts, a 1.16 ERA in the Big Ten, 127 strikeouts in 66 and 2/3 innings in the Big Ten. Big Ten softball is not exactly the pinnacle of the NCAA, but she has been absolutely lights out, and Terra Blanco not too far behind.
Not the pinnacle of the NCAA, but two very, very good softball teams. And yes, Michigan's been down. We have sounded glum over these last several podcasts about the outlook for Michigan. But I think at the end of the day, even though I say it bites that Michigan won't probably win the Big Ten regular season title, the only one that matters is the Big Ten tournament for Michigan, because I think still, whether they go 9-1, whether they go 10-0, I think winning the Big Ten tournament in Ann Arbor is the difference between Michigan hosting a regional and Michigan not hosting a regional.
And they're 13-0 at home this year.
Right. And I think Minnesota has jumped up to number 5 in the country, but again, we're going to talk about them as we come down the line, and every single time we talk about them until then, I will stress that they have two really good players, and if you can get past them, they're a team that can easily be beaten by Michigan.
I mean, okay. Gosh. I think Sarah Gronewagen, you have to...
She counts for like 3 players, but she is a really good player.
Yeah, a pitcher, a hitter, and...
If you can get past Gronewagen, and then the other really big offensive bat in the games that I've watched has been Sammy Mackin, and if you can get past those two, I think this team is not as threatening as they may seem with the number 5 in front of the Minnesota.
Fair enough. There you have it.
And we'll get there. We're going to get there because that's going to be the Big Ten Tournament Championship.
Okay, so here's the next question. Are you 100% confident that Michigan makes the finals of the tournament?
Yes.
You don't see them losing a fluke one to the likes of a Minnesota or an Ohio State and Illinois. Illinois jumped into the top 25.
Illinois is a good softball team. Go ahead, Mo.
I'm pretty confident that Michigan is still at least the second best team in the Big Ten. I wouldn't put them over Minnesota, but if I just had to make sure, it's possible that they lose to a bottom feeder. They just did it last weekend, but it's not something that I would expect, especially with the hurlers they can throw out into the circle.
So I think when you look at Michigan, they have what it takes to not only get to the championship, but when you look at losing to a bottom feeder, they're going to have a bye. So they're going to get past the likes of a Maryland, who only has 9 wins all season.
Look out! Well, Maryland might not even make it because I'm pretty sure only 12 teams make it.
So, and you get past some of those bottom feeder teams. Michigan still has, for all intents and purposes, pretty much run train on Big Ten play with 2 exceptions. The one game that they lost to Maryland this weekend, and then the really ugly, one of the worst games they played this season, the 5-0 loss to Ohio State and Columbus to close out that 3-game set a few weeks ago. And that was only because Shelby McCombs was throwing fire that day for Ohio State. There was something there. McCombs, not a fantastic ERA overall this season. Opponent average, pretty good against her. But the fact that she held Michigan to just 3 hits in that game, I think somewhat of a one-off. Michigan's bats just maybe tired after a long weekend, something like that. So I don't think losing to a bottom feeder is all that realistic for those Big Ten tournament chances, but we're going to continue to talk about it for the next few weeks. But I still think, without a doubt in my mind, that it's Michigan-Minnesota, as it should be in that championship game, whether they lose one this weekend to Wisconsin or not.
I mean, you mentioned Wisconsin. I feel like it's a good segue into this upcoming weekend. Wisconsin on the year, 27-10, 6-8 in conference play, though, so something to look out. They're 7th in the Big Ten. Obviously, Michigan is sitting at 12-2. Wisconsin, a team that was really hot at the beginning of the year. They won the games they needed to win. They were in the top 25 for a hot sec, then quickly dropped. But definitely a series, especially in Madison, that Michigan needs to circle on their calendar, and this is a big series. This is Michigan's last opportunity all year long, regular season-wise, to play somewhat of a competent softball team.
Yeah, and it really is, I think, is a stretch to call them a somewhat competent softball team. They've got a flashy record. They were ranked for a sec, but they did the typical Wisconsin thing, which is to play a cupcake soft non-conference schedule, boost up your your numbers in hopes that you'll fool somebody in postseason rankings. They're 6-8 in the Big Ten. The Big Ten, not a great softball conference. They haven't been particularly impressive against the good teams they've played. They just lost a doubleheader against Minnesota leading into this series by a combined score of 18-1 over the course of those two games. Chloe Miller, an absolute stud on that team heading into conference play, has really cooled off since she was a senior catcher, the leader of the team, but she's hitting over 400 overall, but her conference average only 261. The pitching is not great. They don't really have anybody with sensational stuff. While this might have been a game to circle on the calendar a few weeks ago, I think this is one that Michigan, again, should look to sweep and should expect to sweep. Whether or not that happens is, up to the softball gods, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. The only hallmark in quotes, on this schedule is USF, who they beat early on in the season back in February 3-1, a team that Michigan lost to because they were really tired after playing 10 innings against Florida. And that's just the fact of it, in my opinion. But I think this is a Wisconsin team, like Mo said, played a cupcake schedule. They won some games. They looked really good to people for a minute on paper, and then you start to look at this team, not all that, incredible of a squad in Madison. Pulling up the stat sheet really quick here. I looked at it pre-show. I'll go back and hit on a few points. Chloe Miller, the one really good bat in this lineup, has some power. Wisconsin does hit more long balls than Michigan, but they have fewer power hitters, so it's really concentrated up top. Chloe Miller really leads that race, 9 home runs. She's got 41 RBIs. Really, that's the target to watch for Michigan. I think Megan Betts has that handled. It'll be Tara Blanco's job to shut that down in the second game of the weekend. And then in the circle, they've got 2 pretty good pitchers, but opponents doing a little bit better against them as of late. Caitlin Menz had a ERA under 2 for a good bit. That's crawled up now over 2. Opponents are coming up above 230 against her. And then Kristen Stevens, who Michigan will likely see in the second game this weekend, 2.37 ERA, and opponents are creeping up on her as well, almost 270 opponent average. So I think this is a Wisconsin team that got some inflated stats early from those games and is now starting to fall behind.
Yeah, I mean, as we saw against, New Mexico State early in the season, sometimes these soft opponents can't be taken for granted, and so Wisconsin does deserve credit for marching through that schedule. But with that being said, they've cooled off as of late. They're not that same team. They are not that same caliber of opponent. Michigan should walk all over the Badgers.
Now, one thing I will say is Wisconsin, their pitchers don't strike out a lot of hitters. And I think one thing that definitely goes in Michigan's favor is when they hit the ball in play, you saw it against Michigan State yesterday, is they put pressure on the opposing defense. They take advantage of their errors. They take advantage when they get walked. And I think by not striking out a lot of people and keeping runners in check, I think that definitely helps the Wolverines.
Well, that's the thing about Menz, who Michigan is going to probably see in the first and third games this weekend. She is their sort of one pitcher. Really, really bad walks to Ks ratio, 66 walks, 97 strikeouts. So she puts a lot of folks on base. But again, Michigan's problem isn't getting people on base most days. It's bringing them around once they're on. So long as Michigan can take some kind of advantage on that, it'll be good.
I mean, quickly, predictions.
Michigan drops a game. Maybe the middle game, maybe the last game. This Michigan team is just not the same on the road and at neutral sites as it is at Alumni. And, I just don't have faith that they're going to right the ship that quickly.
Do you hear something in that?
A little buzzing.
Quiet for just a sec.
Ambient.
Shh. That's me getting back on the saddle. The Bull. Michigan wins all 3.
Wow, you are light on your feet, JP. I didn't hear a thing as you got back on this metaphorical
JP,
saddle.
an expert
bull rider.
Saddle jumper. Okay.
I'll tell you what, I rode a mechanical bull a few weeks ago. I actually did okay. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was. I got a good 6 seconds on it before I was off. Not the guy that can stand up on it, but hey, back on the bull. Michigan takes 3.
There you go. JP 3-0, Mo 2-1. I will go 2-1 as well.
Ugh.
No interviews this week as we were going to try to get some today, but Michigan
Practice
softball,
canceled.
they earned an off day.
And
which-
you know what?
Well deserved, though.
I
you
think
know what?
we know where Hutch was. Guess whose birthday today? Good old Marley.
Gotta love Marley. Happy 11th, Marley.
Episode dedicated to Marley today.
I swear that dog looks older than 11. That dog looks like it has been around the block more
Still
than
got a pep in
more
his
than a
step,
few
though.
years. Yeah, I guess.
Marley, wise beyond years.
So we will move into the segment portion, and to start it off, I prepped a little bit of theme music here. Hang on. Bear with me, guys. Bear with me. Trying to work this technology.
By the number.
It's by the number. So the number is 22, right?
Yeah, I mean...
No.
judging by the song-
Number's not 22. False. I was just trying to trick you guys. Number's 19.
Oh.
All right? And
That's 22 minus 3.
It's
The
threefold
number
here.
of games Michigan's going to win this weekend?
Yes. On the bull.
Threefold. One, today is April 19th. Actually, I'm glad I got that in because it just turned April 20th.
It literally just hit midnight.
Literally, see how I timed that up? This is perfect.
Late night in the cave here at WCBN.
So that's number one. That's the first fold. Number two, number 19, Courtney Richardson. Big weekend this week. I mean, that Sunday game, she essentially won that game for Michigan.
Back to her Florida form that we
Yeah,
saw in the opening series of the season. She looked great.
You know what? She dipped off in the middle of this year, but she has really picked it up. And I'm not
Yep.
sure what it has been, but I feel very confident when Richardson's up to bat. Mm-hmm. Should have had a double against Michigan State last week. Leah Forster had, said otherwise. I mean, Leah Forster, heck of a player.
Yeah, for sure. She's got incredible range. She's great at the plate. Robbed Alex Subject of a home run back in the fall, too. So I kind of had some expectations for her defensively coming in. But, yeah, went above and beyond in that Michigan State game a couple weeks ago.
Hats off to Courtney Richardson, player of the game on the podcast here.
Oh, wow. So we're doing that now?
I mean, just for this episode, hey.
All right.
Player of which game? We're doing this
All
after 4
the
games,
games.
JPs.
Why
right.
are you just randomly clicking through country music there?
I didn't think I was.
Yeah, got a little country in there. Maybe a little Dierks Bentley.
Nah,
Yeah, it's,
false. That was Chris Young.
Chris Young, there you go.
All right. Final number 19 by the number. Sponsored by Kevin Klein. On
And
Friday.
by Chris Young.
And Chris Young. If Chris Young, for whatever damn reason you're listening to this podcast, if you'd like to come on, we'd love to have you.
Final by the number.
On Friday, Faith Canfield recorded her 19th hit of conference play.
Wow.
And I'll put a little cherry on that Sunday for you. 422 during Big Ten games for Faith Canfield.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're dragging 22 back into it.
Ooh. Everything
I'm
comes full
telling you,
circle on the
this is
segments.
like some podcast.
Yeah, and I can't
Inception.
believe it's occurring on podcast number 19. All right, can we make this podcast number 19?
No, it's not. It's
No.
still 11.
It's number 11.
All right, fine.
This one goes to 11.
And 11
I
times
feel-
2 is 22, which
I
is the
feel
song
like
that he
whenever we
started.
record podcasts late at night, it
Things
just
get out of hand.
We babble a lot more because this is finals week. It's
Oh, I'm about ready to go to bed.
you got a final tomorrow, Kev?
I do. 4
Oof.
p.m. classic Civ, little Greek mythology.
Ooh boy, toughie.
Yeah, we get in here, try to bang it out in a half hour, and then it always goes like 45 minutes.
Yeah, no worries.
All right, that was by the number.
By the numbers and a little bonus content.
I mean, segments definitely might be a little lacking this week. Usually, Dalton Pataki has some input on what segments we do. I was trying to figure out some good Badger puns because
Yeah.
we're playing the Badgers in Madison this week. Fun fact, well, actually, it's probably not that fun because I think it's well known. Did you know Christner's sister played softball there?
I had some idea that her sister was in the Big Ten, but I didn't do that much in-depth research because I wasn't going to be interviewing her.
There you go. Christner's sister played softball at Wisconsin.
Would have had some great questions for Monty today.
And another little Big Ten connection. And if you're a avid East of the Rockies listener, you'll know this one, but Madison Uden's sister plays for Indiana.
Yes.
We'll see.
That
her
one
soon
that
enough.
one I
Oh, okay.
know.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Didn't know you guys already knew that one. Just trying to put some fun facts
She's
in
been
here.
she's been there a while. We've called her for a few years now, but
She's having a good year.
yeah, not bad. Indiana, mediocre. Michigan takes all 3. Back on the
Really?
bowl.
Also, you know what? And I'll give props. Whoever's idea it was to move senior day to the Sunday of the Indiana series, great job. Instead of making, because I think it was originally supposed to be that Tuesday game against Western Michigan.
Oh, really? Not
Make-
the not Penn State. The
Indiana.
Rutgers. Rutgers is in Piscataway.
Rutgers is in hashtag Fencing Guard. Watch out.
God, we came into this podcast prepared. Such in-depth
Listen.
knowledge of the schedule.
Watch out for opposing stadiums because I saw Maryland Stadium. It says "Fear the Turtle," and I feel like a lot of people don't take that to heart. They only won 9 games.
That's their whole
Fear
like,
that damn turtle.
That's their whole motto.
Yeah,
I'm not scared of turtles.
Watch out for that damn turtle.
Hold on. How many snapping turtles have you encountered in your life, JP?
Like 2 in a zoo.
Because there's some massive snapping turtles out in lakes,
I went
across
to-
Michigan that will strike fear into the depths
I'll tell you,
of
I
your
went
hearts.
to the DC Zoo and there was a snapping turtle, but also at the DC Zoo was an elephant that just left droppings the size of Meijer grocery bags. So that was much cooler.
Yeah, but was it as scary?
Yes.
If you were one-on-one in nature with a snapping turtle, a giant snapping turtle, wouldn't you at least be a bit terrified?
I'd do a Mario. I'd jump on the shell and it would shoot down the line.
Yeah, Michigan should have tried that.
Yeah. No, I'm not scared of no turtle. Great zoo, by the way. Great zoo.
Maryland?
DC Zoo.
Oh, DC.
Good zoo.
You know what? I'm a really big fan of aquariums. Speaking like turtles, got me to water. The Shed, nothing like it.
All right, what's our next segment?
Yeah, let's shed these.
All right, I'm gonna okay.
Let's
Mo.
shed this.
I get
topic
it,
and
Mo.
into some
I get
puns.
it. All right, I'll give you a fun Badger joke, and then we might have to close it out.
Not gonna badger us with them for too long.
What did the grape say when the Badger stood on it? I'm cracking up already.
What?
Nothing. It just let out a little whine. Was that not a good one?
It's like it's.
I think Kev is the only one laughing.
It's like a pun, but it's not like a Badger pun necessarily. Like you could replace Badger in that with like
No, only the Badger can stand on that
only
grape.
the Badger would
Yeah.
cause the grape to let out a little wine. Also, I'm not sure if that's how
also-
winemaking works.
I kind of wanted to talk about like what the most like feared type of badger was, but I feel like you guys
JJ
didn't do
Watt.
your. Okay, I was
I'd be
going to talk
afraid
about
of
real
JJ
badgers,
Watt.
but I thought we
He's
could
a
talk
real
about that.
Badger.
But you guys didn't do
He
your
was.
research on
He's
it.
an alum now. His brother also might get drafted by the Lions. Also a fearsome Badger.
I'd take the honey badger.
Yeah,
Tyrann Matthew.
Yeah.
you would rather. Okay, I might just go with the European badger.
Well, I don't know types of badgers. You must
I-
have done a little
did.
research.
The European, the honey, the American, the hog, the Asian, the Japanese. These are all off the top of my head, too, by the way.
Of course.
Right off the cuff. Wow.
Those are 6 right for you, right there for you.
I gotta say, I still think I'd take J.J. Watt against any Badger from any continent across the globe, and I think that he would probably win the fight.
I'll leave us with a good closing line here, Kev, if you got a close queued up.
Well, you already ruined the surprise. It was going to be some Chris Young.
Oh, okay. Well, are we ready to close this one out?
Absolutely, but we're going to end how we always end.
Okay, do that first. I'll leave us with a parting word.
All right, one thing you learn, one thing you want to know.
One thing I learned is just throughout the course of the last couple weeks is that Michigan State is a softball team on the rise and one to look forward to down the road. We didn't talk about them a ton, but yeah, keep your eyes out for East Lansing. One thing I still want to know, I want to know how the heck we're going to invoke numbers in next week's By the Numbers, because there's no way it can be as well planned and perfect as it was this week.
Thank you, Mo. I appreciate that.
I learned that Kev is really tricky, coming out with 22 and then pulling the number as 19. Classy.
I could have gone 19 something by Mark Willis.
Yeah. One thing I still want to know, man, out of all the years, and we can get a stat check on this later, out of all the years that Marley has been here, 11 as of today, happy birthday, Marley, again, episode dedicated to Marley, is this the lowest power hitting team that Michigan has had in that time span in terms of home runs?
I wonder which team was Marley's favorite throughout all this time.
It's a good question, too.
We'll try to get
Things
him
we
on the
wanna
pod.
know.
We could have interviewed him if we had gone to practice.
I mean, he was
today,
very
if they had
fond of
held
you, Mo.
practice. Yeah, I know. I think I could ask some good questions. We'll have to save that for a future episode.
All right, one thing I learned a bunch of different types of badgers today. I did a little pre-research here.
But I thought it was all off the top.
Yeah, it was because I'm a great memorizer.
He's got photographic memory. Really photogenic memory.
I got the face for radio and
That's true.
podcast.
Yeah, that's all right.
Non-video podcast. One thing I want to know is, you know what? I want to know how they determine which badgers go in which category. Like, how can you tell like an American badger goes in an American badger category, not
One
the
lives
Euro-
in America.
Yeah,
No.
it's probably by where they're located geographically.
Yeah.
Well,
You're done.
sorry. Okay. All right. As always, thanks for listening. Email us at eotrpod@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at WCBN Sports.
Follow the podcast on SoundCloud. Subscribe on iTunes if you are Apple enabled. And as they say in Wisconsin, smell the derriere.
That's good. I like that. We'll leave you with a good night and a go blue.